there's been a little bit of drama with Danhausen where there's been a weird miscommunication. Well, great job, guys. Like, you can't even communicate with your roster to know what they really want. That they were under the impression supposedly that he wants to do indies and he was doing them, but really he'd rather be on the show instead of just sitting around doing indies for a year. But while contracted, his contract ends supposedly reportedly in the summer next year. They'd be smart. Just move on from him. You're not using him. Just move on. Save money. Move on from him. Also, Dustin Rhodes sent some weird kind of cryptic messages on X about thanking fans, and then also before that, post about loyalty and keeping your team, your inner circle small, and all this kind of stuff. And there's been talk that his contract is up, so it seems like he's probably leaving the AEW. Firstly, is either of them leaving AEW a loss for the company on any level, or their roster's so bloated that their departure won't really be felt anyway?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I don't think it'll be a big hit to AEW. There was good fanfare when Danhausen first debuted. He was kind of an indie darling and an internet kind of sensation, and they really didn't do a whole lot with him. A lot of factors go into play. Injuries and just creative differences, whatever the case may be. But I think the bigger loss might be Dustin, just for morale's sake. And apparently he has a big hand in training a lot of the backstage talent. So I think that might be a bigger loss in the grand scheme of things for AEW, but they'll be, I don't want to say fine without them because AEW is not particularly fine right now. But yeah, I don't think this would be a big loss either way. Interestingly enough, I think both could make some minor waves in WWE. Like, I think I think we might have discussed this in the past, but like Danhausen and NXT would be a lot of fun. A lot of potential bookings there, and NXT has the kind of more lighthearted vibe that lends more to his style. And with Cody being the guy in WWE, I don't necessarily expect to see Dustin back in the on camera capacity, but like working backstage or being an agent or working with the talent down in NXT, being I mean, a lot of people from NXT were Dusty's kids. Maybe Dustin can help like carry on that tradition or something like that. He has a wealth of knowledge. Everybody speaks highly of just his mind for the business and his ability to train talent. So I think they would both be, additions very much in the plus column for WWE if they decide to go that route. But in terms of minuses for AEW, not a big minus either one.
Yeah, I don't think Danhausen's is unfortunately is going to be too much. And you said on why Dustin, there is some value being lost, and also just the more adults in the room they lose, the more it hurts them. The more some of these older guys that are leaving, the more the product has gone down. Like the sensible, experienced people that make a difference in a company that have in WWE for decades are leaving, and they're leaving it up to the inmates, and the inmates don't really know how to run the asylum, unfortunately. I will get to one of the top inmates doesn't even want to be a part of this asylum, it seems like. But going on, I think perfect scenario for both is NXT, really. Danhausen, I think, would just be perfect for NXT. They're in such a good mode right now where they're having a really fun diversity of the roster. They're having Chase U is a perfect example of how fun and they can. And not everybody has to be a badass. And I think he'd be really interesting. He's a real solid wrestler, so he can offer something there. But just as a fun character, the interactions with different characters would be so much fun. And for Dustin, I think what's going on with Shawn Spears is there in NXT where he's a wrestler, but he also has a role backstage to help the younger talent. Dustin would be perfect in that. Unfortunately, I think he has a bit of an ego where he still wants to wrestle and make an impact, and I think that's kind of going to hurt his business opportunities in a way a little bit. That said, I still think there is some equity in him on the main roster. He doesn't have to be performing all the time, but his history with his brother and backing up his brother, and there's something interesting there, and that can be used in some unique ways. And the stuff they did with their father when they won a tag title, they beat the Shield, was a lot of fun. And it could just be short term, just for a year or so, and then if he wants to have one good solid run with WWE for matches, interesting stuff here and there, and then go to NXT, I think to be perfect. That said, I think Dustin would be useful with TNA. TNA has made of veterans and bringing them in interesting ways and playing to their strengths instead of their weaknesses. I think he can be interesting. There's always talent coming and going there. He can be something interesting because of his branding. He's a Rhodes, and you have a top Rhodes in WWE and the history of their father, and him being a part of the company and stuff like that. I think that'd be interesting. But either way, it will be interesting how either situation plays out. But it's their AEW's loss is going to be another company's gain.